when you hear guerrilla intellectual, how do you what does that mean to you?
I mean, I got to tell you, I think that's a key question. I think it's a question of praxis, by which I mean an activation, if not a weaponization, of the intellectual work and labor that we do, ideally in connection with and with real devotion to insurgent, insurrectionist, aspirationally revolutionary communities. Right, that's what it means to me to be, in broad terms, what a guerrilla intellectual is. It means that you are actually trying to activate and weaponize your intellectual labor. And I've been in different circles of kind of radical scholars and academics and whatnot, and it's what's pushed me to really emphasize the weaponization, because I think that's where the hesitation happens. And I think the failure or the refusal, really, it's an active refusal. It's a liberal refusal to weaponize ourselves in connection to insurgency and insurrection and resistance and revolutionary struggle and abolition struggle. That's the shit that for me serves as a general differentiation between guerrilla intellectuals and what I would call academics. I've been saying this over and over again. I'll say it here. I think I disidentify as much as I possibly can with the term and the position of academic, because I think it is a colonial white supremacist and anti-Black aspiration, including for those of us who are Black and brown so-called academics, right? I think as an aspiration, it is toxic. It is contrary to all the things that we here, the three of us, understand ourselves as being devoted to, right? So, I mean, I try to actively disidentify with academic. And I also want to say that part of guerrilla, the kind of position of guerrilla intellectuals to understand that you're also in this relatively privileged position to take a bunch of risks. I mean, it's stunning. We're in the middle of a labor strike right now, and what I'm looking at is a bunch of my colleagues at this, fellow, faculty employees who are unwilling to take even the most meager risks to respect a picket line, right? And so if I'm going to be serious about the notion of trying to understand what it means to inhabit that position of a guerrilla intellectual, then I think it means a constant assessment in community with folks like you all, to understand what it means to embrace the risk, to that we can take, to understand that intellectuals, people that are in that position, they can do a lot in terms of circulating thoughts and feelings and forms of analysis and frameworks out into the world that can be activated as soon as they're out in the world, right? Like putting ideas and thoughts, radical ideas and thoughts, stuff that is risky to actually circulate, right? Like there's people who get fired for doing that kind of shit, right? So I think that's what I'm saying. It needs to be a collective assessment, but I think guerrilla intellectual means that's the least you can do, right? Sure. In addition to like the humble labor of actually contributing to things in which you are not the center of the energy, right? Like, I mean, I think that's really critical. And I think that's actually part of your intellectual work, is to be in community with folks like that, with people like Sonny, people like you who have expertise and skill sets in other areas that I'm amateur, I'm a student. So I think that's also central to being guerrilla intellectual. It means that you're actually involved in collective forms of labor that expand your skill set and challenge your skill set and also reveal your own limitations.
I think what's sold to us is that knowledge and, rhetoric and publications and platforms become the sum total of the intellect. That if you can't produce a commodity, you're not a real intellectual. And for me, I've been educated and politicized by people who are not academics, even though I have comrades who are academics, right? Like Dylan and stuff. But, Dylan goes to the source, right? And I'm thinking about Cabral right now, return to the source. And the resource would be the communities in struggle and the intellectualism that they abide by, but they also create it. What I don't like is the siphoning off that the academy does. And also, I think there's some kind of pimp thing going on here. Maybe that's not the right word, but, like you showcase certain kind of concepts or something that you just got from other people whose names you disappear, right? Because you need to like sign your name on it and then it becomes part of your portfolio. So I don't think we can ever stop that because it's a form, it's like embedded in capitalism and consumption and commodification. But I think we could strengthen our ties to community-based intellectuals and also, you know, how to say, it's not deferring unless there's some kind of agreed upon system of how we do collective decision making, but it's recognition. And also because you recognize and you respect, you don't distort. Like for what I've been seeing over the last couple of decades, I see people go to revolutionary thinkers, most of them deceased or offshore, can't speak for themselves, and then they cultivate a raw crop and then they process it and then it becomes basically anti-revolutionary by the time it gets into academic production. I don't know if this is too abstract. Am I not making sense here?
No, you're on point. It sounds like you're saying that the seeds are altered and that you have a clone of some sort. You know, a clone that doesn't have a soul.
Yeah, and so so this thing I think is relevant, Dylan, to the inability to respect a picket line. You know, like go have your class at, you know, a coffee shop that is in Starbucks, right? That's also, you know, union busting. But the way in which we create our portfolios is partly tied to siphoning off from radicals. And so then when we see in real life something that's progressive, even, you know, I mean, unions can be radicals. They also can be, you know, progressives. We can't even, I mean, the bar has been lowered so much because people have gotten away with just capture of ideas that when you see like, oh, here's a strike, can you just respect that? Sign a petition, call the governor of Missouri, who's a Republican. You know, I didn't say that was going to work, but can you do anything? It's like, no, we don't have to do anything because we have, quote, these ideas, which, you know, we went offshore, got these ideas, brought them back. And now we have swag.
Yeah, and a brand.
Yeah, brand.
You know what I mean? Like I mean, that's I mean, what Joy's talking about is how it's not, by the way, we're being hard on academics, which we should be, but it's more than academics. You know, it's activists, you know, celebrity types, it's clout, it's all the clout thirsty kind of folks. It's high profile people who are funded by the nonprofit industrial complex. I think they're in a similar position in terms of grift and having a relation of grift and extraction from the forms of movement and insurgency and organizing and thought that are coming up from various communities, many of them modestly organized or organized in ways that are not legible to people in universities or in academic settings, much less to people in kind of nonprofit industrial complex settings, and who are therefore dismissed or denigrated or just in, I know this is an ableist term, but I'm using it purposefully because I think it's an ableist concept. They're seen as crazy. Right. I'm talking about people who are incarcerated, people who are unhoused, people who are sex workers, people who are doing trans abolitionist forms of organizing. A lot of that shit is not legible to people, and it's scary to people. Like, it scares the shit out of me, but like, I embrace that shit. You know what I mean? Like, it actually, I learned from that. It changes my loyalties to certain paradigms of doing political and intellectual work, and that's beautiful. That shit is beautiful. Like, that's I live on that. Like, that gives me breath. But in that way, maybe I'm a bad academic, which is great too. You know what I mean? Like, maybe I'm for the abolition of academics. You know what I mean? Like, I think I am.
Dylan, put that on a hoodie or a sweatshirt. Bad academics. Like,
I'm telling on myself.
Hey, it was clear when you stepped on the screen, my man. They already knew what time it was. It's like the jig is up, but they already knew what time it was. But that it goes back to what Joy was talking about in regards to, I mean, it's big pimping, and that's exactly what it is. It's all about, you know, it's about fortune, it's about fame, it's about notoriety, it's about, you know, I mean, right now the thing that's blowing me is the whole nonprofit packaged in Black Revolution. You understand what I'm saying? It's looking like something on the outside, but when you walk into this home, there's really nothing there. You know what I'm saying? It's just a shell, and that's what's going on right now across the board.
Okay, but then this is all right. So this is where I love love because it's kind of what Dylan said. It makes you want to love people you're not supposed to be talking to, right? And then you start talking to them and you're like, oh my God, I feel more alive because they actually, it's like infusion. It's not a charity system, right? It's a mutuality, it's reciprocity. I'm learning to, and also my emotional landscape is waking up. Like, because most of the times, I just emotionally deaden myself so I can just get the work done. Because there's too many losses. So I'm not gonna I don't want to feel everything, but I can work like, a machine or a soldier, use whatever descriptor you want. But the point is to show up with our feelings, right? And so that doesn't happen without risk. All love is a form of risk. And it's worth the risk. And then, of course, there are, these penalties that people try to levy on you. I think we can make bold demands. Like, I'm going to make one right now, of course. Dylan knows I was in the in crew when he first met me, and then I got kicked out. Had to figure out how to reinvent myself and as a nobody. And then okay,
that's
I'm
a whole
back.
memoir. That's a whole memoir waiting to be written, Joy.
Yeah, no, that's a whole memoir. That hopefully it won't be. But so it's sort of like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my train of thought back. But if we were to humble ourselves and control our fear level to learn across the board, then I would say, because some of this is packaged because people are Black femme, Black queer, Black women, feminists, you can't touch them, right? That becomes the firewall. And so I was like, well, I fit some of those categories, so I'm gonna say what I want. But I'm like, if you have this real estate and it's your second, third house or something like that, and political prisoners are coming out, you could create in that nice millionaire level edifice, you could create a welcoming center where their family and them could come, and then there are medical ramps, and then there's there's wheelchair, whatever we need for our elders, free of cost.
That's right.
Because I know you're writing that off as a nonprofit, and you're probably we're taking a loss, so it's going to debit, and then my taxes will be fine. But just say we got property in California, we got property in Canada, we got it here and there. If you're coming out of prison, after decades of being tortured as a political prisoner, we can accommodate in the pool house or the villa or whatever. We can accommodate you and your family for 6 months and cover all the cost. There's nothing that I know of in a nonprofit sector that would prohibit that. You've got attorneys, have them write something up. But I don't hear people asking for that. And I tried to bring that up months ago with a venerated, maybe I talk too much, I don't care, with a venerated person who did real time, and I respect them and stuff like that. And I was like, well, we know some folks have all this money and they say they're Black revolutionaries, and just ask them for real money or real access to property. And that's prohibited. It's almost seen as a criticism, and maybe it is critique, but who cares? I'm gonna go back to what we said, and then I'm gonna stop for a minute. I grew up on military bases. I grew up, as I said before, Bible people, Bible Belt. Yea, though I walk through the shadow of the valley of death. The rebels are like hospice. They're always there with the dying or the persecuted or the hunted or the tortured. I mean, the people, if you don't want to be on that level, if you don't want to walk through the valley, okay, other people will do it. But you need to pony up something tangible, at least your real estate access.
I mean, that's some serious words there, Dr. Joy James. Are you suggesting that these folks walking around with these tens of millions of dollars, actually support political prisoners, support veterans of the movement, many of these folks who they parlayed an empire off of their blood, sweat, and tear? Are you suggesting that they actually give back to the people who gave their all, who gave their everything? Folks like Dr. Mutulu Shakur, who we're having emergency fundraisers for right now to make sure that he can get out and travel to his destination and to be able to spend his last days with his family. I mean, you know, these folks only have like $90 million. I mean, like, what are you going to do? I mean, like, how, what are you asking for here? Is this, you know?
Well, you know, one of the things I would say, I mean, the money got, you know, was distributed and spent and stuff like that. So, I mean, their levels lower, but, you know, you're still talking multimillionaire. When I first met Dylan, Jared, and Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, Dylan, y'all were being kicked out of maximum security prisons as graduate students because you followed the incarcerate when they said, we want to read this, we want to learn this. I mean, you agape, love is political will. And also, y'all got your doctorates, but I'm sure there are a lot of people who were trying to slam you and make sure you didn't get to walk with the degree. What I'm saying is everybody can risk something or tithe something. You can all put something in the collection plate. If you don't want to be on the front line, if you don't want to take certain kind of hits, if you don't want to lose your job over it, okay, fine. But there's a way. We started by talking about how we organize ourselves and then how we don't. You don't have to like us. You don't have to like political prisoners. You just have to contribute more. And I think that would be a form of self-love, actually. I don't know if that makes sense, but it, you know, I mean, if you could say come over to my house, but it's like, I don't have that kind of funds. But maybe that's my cop out. So maybe I do more. I write some checks, donate or something like that. But I guess the thing is, here's how I want to say it, I guess. You can't be a celebrity and accumulate and not have a conduit of funds back into the sectors that you use to leverage your profile, including like non-political prisoners, just poor Black people who get caught up by the police. When George Floyd was murdered, I remember listening on WBAI to a Black pastor say, if you kill us, we will kill your economy. I haven't heard anybody say anything like that other than these platforms. And I'm not even saying that academics or celebrity activists have to utter a word. I'm just saying, like, if you're not going to kill a capitalist economy, then create another kind of economy for the underground.
Yes, that was a lot of words right there that made sense. Dylan, you wanna?
Yeah, I want to add to what Joy is saying, because so I'm banging on universities, I'm banging on academics, I'm banging on the nonprofit industrial complex, I'm banging on all the people who are clout thirsty and grifting and extracting from movements and insurrections in order to up their profile and, you know, build their own forms of entrepreneurialism. You know, so I'm doing all that. I'm also going to say that all of these toxic and corrupted institutional sites are very much terrains of guerrilla struggle, right? And that's the definition of guerrilla war, right? In the revolutionary sense, is that you understand that you inhabit occupied and toxic territories and institutions, and the responsibility becomes, you know, trying to figure out a way to counter occupy or to inhabit those sites, both above ground and underground, right? Some of us gave up the underground a long time ago because we're in positions that are actually a liability to the underground, right? But in other ways, you know, we're being above ground people, meaning people who are employed by universities. That above ground position can actually do something for the underground too, right? Number one, and this is what I mean by the terrains of struggle, universities and the nonprofit industrial complex, by which I mean philanthropy and foundations, those are absolutely sites to be taken advantage of for direct resource redistribution, Right. Universities, no matter what universities tell you, including University of California and other public universities, talking about scarcity and talking about austerity and talking about lack of fund. These are sites of capital, right? Not even wealth and resources, capital, right? I mean, billions of dollars flow through these institutions. People who consider themselves, who aspire to be in the position of guerrilla intellectual against their own hiring as an academic. The bare minimum standard for those who are not wealthy, I'm talking about assistant professors making $70,000 a year, which in some places is not a lot of money. In other places, it's plenty, right? But one political and tactical responsibility, I think, is to find direct ways to redistribute the resources that they can access to people that are in the positions of vulnerability and suffering, financial and otherwise, that Joy is talking about, right? So as soon as people get out of prison, or for that matter, jail, right? For that matter, detention center, I have a line out to multiple communities and organizations that let them know, okay, right now I've got access to X, Y, and Z forms of funding. All you got to do is contact me, and we will put something together that is fully above ground, that is fully legal, and which will allow for in those moments, a relatively significant redistribution of university resources, because that's just not mine. Part of the problem with these institutions, part of the problem with entrepreneurs and academics and nonprofit industrial complex elites, is they view these dirty colonial chattel, sources of capital as their own.
Right.
You know what I mean? They identify with that too, and they identify against their own politics, which is something that we need to just kind of shine some real critical light onto that, right? Some clarity onto that, and understand that the other part of this as well, in addition to redistribution, and this is another responsibility, I'd say this is an obligation. I think, the position of a guerrilla intellectual also, I think it also means that, again, bare minimum standard, right? The bottom line is, I think serious guerrilla intellectuals can and must find ways to honor and justify forms of cultural and political insurgency, in revolt, insurrection, and for that matter, violence, that others dare not talk about. Right. I will be marked for the rest of my life by being in a room full of people who identify as radical intellectuals, radical scholars, radical academics, most of whom they didn't even look at me sideways. They just thought I was being childish when I talked about, just in a sentence, because I was frustrated with the room, I talked about how what if we found a way to collectively celebrate when the people burned down a police station.
Correct.
Right. What we found out? What if we just decided to commit to doing that? As it be, and this wouldn't be the first time. This wouldn't be the first time, and it would. And but I'm saying, in particular, in certain sites, especially the ones that were in this kind of North American, U.S. centric, overdeveloped university so-called academic context, right? Like, you're not supposed to do that, right? But I think there's something to be done around insurgency, revolt, and insurrection that is complex, it's rewarding, and it's necessary. And I think it actually needs to be honored, and it needs to be, in some ways, as I think, it's fun on Asada Shakur, Safia Bukhari and others would say, it actually needs to be justified. I mean, in the deepest sense of the term, of justified.